can't lose. No, we can't lose.
Enjoy it while it lasts. Gambling gods, fickle bunch. Oh yeah, so easily
We
affected.
have a shooter and a good one coming out for a new point. Get your bets down, ladies and gentlemen. He's a rolling point is 9, place 9. 9 a winner. Got a hot hand. Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen.
They bet on absolutely anything. Don't make them prove.
Rundown, what are the top benefits to backtesting then?
It allows you to get some level of extra confidence in a bottom-up model.
You're tuned in to Gambling with Good JuJu.
Welcome in, everybody, to Gambling with Good JuJu, the show with more modeling than IMG. That's a modeling agency, Ryan.
Is that what that means?
That's what that is.
Okay.
That's a modeling agency.
Wow.
Hey, before we kick things off, do us a favor and head on over to YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and give us a like, follow, subscribe. Heck, leave a comment. We can also be found on a couple of socials at Good JuJu Bets. And if you really like us, then head on over to goodjujubets.net, click on the merch shop, and show your support.
Yeah, shout out Big J's Plays. Hitting the shop. Yeah,
thank you,
sir.
Big J's Plays,
Appreciate
for
it.
hitting the shop. Before we get started, folks, I do apologize for my voice. I am in the midst of baseball season. I am in the midst of cold season for me. Yelled at a bunch of kids from Monday through Wednesday this week, and I'm starting to feel it a little bit. So we're going to battle, and we're going to get through it, okay?
All right. Well, I appreciate you making the sacrifice.
Well, yeah, we're in good shape. This week, we welcome back onto the show host of the Risk Takers podcast, GoldenPants. He recently hosted an episode on the pros and cons of backtesting, and well, we're feeling ourselves just enough to think that we can hang with him for 20 minutes on the topic. GP, welcome into the show. Let's start here. Why is Kalshi more afraid of horses than sports?
So, let me set you up a little, right? Because you are the king of the Kalshi news.
It's unofficial sponsor of our news segment.
I was absolutely like the first thing I thought of when it was Derby week was great. No more parimutuel betting. Let me just hop on Kalshi and like decide which horses to take. And I was shocked there wasn't a market for it.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, I can see horse racing's always kind of existed in this weird place outside of casino and outside of sports betting.
Right.
So I'm sure it was I'm sure it was a legal thing. Like, they're ready to rip. So if they could have done it, they would have offered it. Like that, there must have been there's someone probably telling them that this might be a step too far. And they're really, I mean, for them, it doesn't really matter. They still like to seemingly like play super aggressively on the legal side of things.
Right.
But I guess I assume they're trying to sneak in as sports, and something about horse racing would be too like obviously gambling would be my guess.
Can you set the stage real quick for the audience?
Kalshi. Yeah. Well, let's let the king of Kalshi.
Yeah.
What is Kalshi and why is it different? Yeah.
Yeah, as somebody who just talks about them and doesn't use them, they're a quote unquote prediction market. So
right.
What that means is they're an illegal sports book trying to operate legally in the United States, and they are trying to say that their betting on sports there is actually like a financial contract that is supposed to be governed by basically the CFTC, which oversees like a lot of the options trading and futures and all of that derivative stuff. And they're saying like this is like a future or like an option, and it has some kind of intrinsic value to like hedging or something. Like, it's all nonsense.
Yeah.
But, like, they're basically trying to say like this is the same thing as buying like a future on corn.
What I don't understand is what's the loophole that they're exploiting right now? Like, because there's a pretty well regulated, legalized sports gambling market. So what are they operating under that allows them to operate in this gray area?
I think like the loophole is more like keep going until we get put in jail. Like
Yeah.
I don't think it's even like the sweepstakes stuff is like a general loophole they're operating under. It's less obvious to me like what the prediction markets like loophole is. Instead, they kind of like they like declared this is legal and then just offered it, and then like said that they don't have to answer to the state gambling boards, and they actually answered to this thing, the CFTC, and oh yeah, like Donald Trump Jr. is like on our board, so like it'll be fine, and it's kind of worked out.
You could have voted on the Pope. Audio.
You
bet on the Pope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty mad I didn't.
No. You could have predicted.
Predicted the
We could have predicted the Pope. We're less than 200 miles away from his hometown, and we didn't do it.
We didn't do it.
We didn't do it. We didn't drop on it. Okay, I
I
got.
did see the spike.
Yeah.
The American Pope wasn't a heavy front runner. I saw that.
Yeah. One final question here on the Kalshi thing, because, well, I guess it's more on the parimutuel thing. NASCAR has talked about going into
Yes.
How do you do that? Like, do the books have to get permission from the leagues in order to offer their markets?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. But the NASCAR story is like one of my favorite news stories we kind of looked at. And it was because like some guy at NASCAR was like, this could work as a parimutuel market, and then went out and like worked with third parties to be like, is this something that we could build? Because to build like a parimutuel product, maybe they want to have certain data from NASCAR that isn't available, or they need certain things like for example, like Live Golf. You're wearing, you're a huge Live fan, Peter, as I can tell. You don't even watch the golf. You're more in it for like their moral stance, the culture. Exactly.
The culture.
But a lot of states like don't offer live betting because the data it like isn't basically like deemed to be up to standards or whatever. So there is some data level that you have to reach for sportsbooks to offer it. As far as like you need permission from the league to offer a bet, I don't think that's true, but I'm not sure. But the NASCAR thing was more of like what I saw it as is like they see that betting drives engagement, and for a parimutuel product, you want something like golf or horse racing or NASCAR where it's like kind of an outright-esque market. Like those work really well for parimutuels. Like a parimutuel between two NBA teams is just like a money line bet, right? But like there's more gamesmanship in like a full kind of field of runners, that you get in like a race, and you can consider like golf like a race, I guess. So it works well, and they see like gambling drives engagement, and like the sports books just like weren't really offering a lot of NASCAR markets. So I think they took it upon themselves to be like, well, could we be proactive in this? And that was kind of like I think a lot of sports leagues are like, pretend to keep gambling like at arm's length or whatever. But they were just like, hey, I see we're not getting like, there's not a lot of markets up. They're not willing to take big size. So like a sports book would have no incentive to not take big size in a parimutuel because they're just taking like a rake out of the pool. But if they're offering the outright market for NASCAR, maybe they just don't feel comfortable. They can model the sport well enough or devote resources to the sport. So I think it was just like a play by NASCAR to figure out a way to get some more betting interests. And with betting interests, obviously, like we've seen comes eyeballs. So I thought it was really like the first time that promise of like it will drive engagement to the sport was kind of like sought out by an actual person in a league. So I thought that was interesting because of that.
Yeah.
Do you think that next year they will be operating as a parimutuel market?
Probably not.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I hope. I think that's cool. But I think it's because you have to. Parimutuels aren't really a thing in the United States. Like it's not. They're not very popular here. And people like if you were to operate in Australia or something, I think more people would get it. But you're fighting a pretty uphill battle in the States.
As an advantage better, do you see any benefit to parimutuel betting?
Yeah, I mean, if there's two things that are good about parimutuel betting. One is there's no incentive for the house to boot you. So it's kind of like DraftKings Pick Six. Like if you can think about that as a semi like parimutuel-esque contest, or it really is like it's a complicated parimutuel, and that was like really good for a while. And I think that is a good example of something that the public of America like didn't get, because what happened with pick six was like whenever the fish won, their payouts would be like 9x on a 6 of 6, and they'd be like, what the hell, like, and they would complain to support. And then like, so they were fielding all of these, and this is what I heard from, you know, either people talking to the people on the pick six teams or secondhand accounts, but like they're fielding all these questions of like, oh, my slip hit, but I only got paid, you know, 9x. These odds suck. It's like, well, it's because you pick like Mahomes over Kelsey over like, you know, Derrick Henry over. Like it's just like, yeah, everybody had that slip. But so I think like that mechanic of it is really good for sharp bettors, because you can exploit like the game theory aspect of it, and you're not worried about getting limited. I worry about sometimes like the squares were just getting absolutely slaughtered in pick six. So parimutuel, like an outright market like NASCAR, would be less prone to that, because I think it would basically, the pricing would basically converge closely to, I don't know what the sharp NASCAR book is, but you know, whatever's offered on Pinnacle or Bet Online or whatever. But for like more complex stuff like pick six, it can really get bad quickly for the bad players.
Got it. All right, let's clarify a couple things just so the audience gets brought up to speed with it.
All right.
First of all, pick six is an offering by DraftKings. You pick 6 players, all 6 hit, you hit your winnings. Based on what you're saying, GP, the pick six pays out based on the aggregate of people who are selecting those picks. So if you pick 6 players who are super popular and the general public's going to be on them, if you hit all 6 of those, your payout's going to be lower than if you're engaging, as GP said, in game theory and taking more players who are going to be less popular overall. Is that correct?
Yeah. It literally is a parimutuel, because you split your winnings with everybody who hit the bet.
Yep.
So you split the winnings of the pool with everybody who got 6 of 6.
Yep. And the key differentiator between a parimutuel and a traditional sports book is your odds don't lock in until close. You don't get the odds as of the time that you bet them.
Right.
So
Exactly.
just making sure everyone's on the same page and knows what we're talking
Yeah, we got pretty nerdy there.
Yeah, I know. That's great.
That's great. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what happens when you have like an electric guy like me on the podcast.
All right. Well, let's get into some non-nerdy stuff. Backtesting.
Yes.
All right, let me set the stage for a minute here, GP. We're working on our own project, and we're getting dangerously close to the backtesting phase. We're utilizing a high-quality read beyond the odds, shout out to Elihu, Fuestel, to build a college football betting system. I'm still not sure if I get in trouble for calling it a model. Or not. Okay. All right. Anyway, build out this model that hopefully creates more efficient first half lines using the parent lines and historical game data. Okay. So as we're getting all hyped up for this next stage, we pop on the latest Risk Takers episode, and our guy GP is debating whether we should even backtest at all. So for our audience, definitely not for us, GP, what is this debate based on?
Okay. So this is the episode SP and I thought that nobody would listen to.
Okay, wait. All right, I'm going to stop you real quick here, because we had this debate too. You were saying in this episode at the very start, you teased it like 5 consecutive episodes or something, GP, and you were like, it's the episode everyone's going to be waiting for.
Yeah.
Everyone wants this. And I was taking you at your word. And then I was filling out the agenda for this, and my partner over here goes, dude, I'm pretty sure he was being sarcastic every time he said that. So clarify that for us. Do you think people are actually interested before you did this episode?
I mean, it's great that I have such a comedic presence that this has to be debated.
Electric.
Yeah, electric.
I will take the fall.
I was being sarcastic.
Because I was excited, GP. You were
Yeah.
talking about it 5 weeks. I'm like, we're getting into this. We're ready. They're pumped. It sounds like everyone's into this.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Well, I think the good thing is either way, it kind of builds the excitement because you're like, okay, well, now I have to tune in to see how boring this is. Or, oh, everyone's so excited about this.
All right, get into it.
No, the thing with that one was like, I think it's such an important part of bottom up betting or modeling or whatever you want to call it. And it's hard to, it doesn't like play well. I felt like on audio, and SP and I like seemingly had a slightly different opinion at first. So that's why I was calling it like a debate that everyone's looking forward to. It really wasn't like a debate, and not many people were looking forward to it. But that was kind of the great joke I told. And but it was good. Like it was more like that, like 1 for me, 1 or like 9 for them type thing. Like I really wanted to. I actually like kind of go the opposite. Like I used to kind of go like, or like 1 for me, like 2 for them.
Yeah.
Now we're like just fully leaned into like 10 for me. Like maybe I'll give you 1 next year. And that's, so we decided to do backtesting, and it's kind of it's a subject that is technical. So we had to do a podcast about it that didn't rely on sharing lines of code or walking through a video of a printout of a backtest result and being like, okay, this is what I saw in this backtest. And like, would I have wanted to do that anyway? Like probably not, at least like give one of our actual backtest results. So then I'd have to like make something else just for the purpose of like walking through it, and that would be super time consuming. So I think it was like, how can we talk about backtesting in a way that works on audio, that people will learn something from, but doesn't necessarily like doesn't walk you through step by step, because you could only do that using some like visual medium, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask this then, because basically as you went through that episode, you talked about, you know, the pros and cons of backtesting overall. So what are some of the pitfalls that go into backtesting that would even lead you to consider this debate?
Yeah, I think the obvious one is what people call overfitting. We talked a lot about it, but basically overfitting is like you are just, so in a backtest, like let's say like you're talking about your model. Let's just say a fake parameter that goes into your model is like weather, right? And let's just say like for whatever reason you give like each degree a certain value for a total. So like, you know, if it's 70 degrees, you know, to the total is like plus 0.1 or something. I don't know. This is all made up. But then let's say like randomly, like if you actually make 70 degrees like -2 to a total, and then like 71 degrees like +1 to a total, like, and the backtest does better, but it only does better because you're just like tweaking everything randomly until you get like the best possible outcome. Then like, sure, you did the best job of like brute forcing a good backtesting result, but like the model like won't win going forward.
Right.
So I think like that's obvious, and most people wouldn't do that specific example, but there's probably like smaller, more subtle ways that people still, and myself included, like everybody still falls prey to that a little.
Yeah.
So is it more along the lines of, if you're working to fit your data into your model and you're overfitting, you may be getting the alignment and the data that you're looking for, but you don't necessarily have that foundation of the hypothesis really driving it? Because if the hypothesis is the temperature goes up and scores go up as a result, 1 degree of difference isn't going to make a 3-point difference. We just kind of know that from a hypothesis standpoint. But then if the data says it, that's more just noise and other things that are probably factoring in there, or just not driven by the truth behind the hypothesis?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like the hypothesis is the thing that, or my favorite thing that prevents me from overfitting. Because instead of just being like, I'm going to sit here and tweak everything until I get a backtest result I like, instead, what I'll do is I'll think about golf, or I'll watch it, or I'll go through like a bunch of data. And instead of it's interesting for golf because people will say like Keith Mitchell like only plays well on Thursday, and like maybe there's some signal to that. Like it would be tiny amount, but more so what I'm thinking is like I'm trying to come up with an idea first, and then put it into code, and then run it through the backtest. And then if that doesn't work, I'm not just going to start randomly flicking numbers around.
Yep.
I'll just go back, get really sad. Like I never sweat anything as hard as a backtest result after something that I've worked so hard on. Like
Oh, I love
I
it.
can't tell. Like we had this one. I had figured out like this like key to like driving on the PGA Tour, and I
Okay.
worked so hard. I created like my own custom metrics on like it took weeks and weeks of time, and I run it through the backtest, and it did worse than our like super basic like. Can you swear on gambling? Good
Yes.
JuJu?
Yeah, please do
Our
it.
basic JuJu stupid thing we had before. It just did worse, and we
Yeah.
just scrap it. It's just gone. I'm like, okay,
So
gone.
hypothesis over.
And then I have to start again. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Did you go back to the hypothesis, or did you say, nope, that hypothesis is incorrect?
secretly I go back to it.
Yeah, right. Keeps you up at night.
Yeah, secretly I still think there's something there, but
Something's still
it's-
keeping you awake.
it's not. It has to there. It has to be like a. There's something. I actually kind of went. I've kind of come to peace with that one because I think
Yeah.
I know what's happening. But I think that process is why is how I can best keep myself from overfitting, because it's like having a hypothesis is going to keep you like inherently from just doing things that don't make sense but will do well in the backtest. And you know, if you truly start from a hypothesis point of view and it's confirmed, I just think that's so much stronger than moving numbers around and getting a
Yeah.
good result.
Yeah.
And like you'll feel that when you go bet, because if you just moved a bunch of numbers around and you start betting, it's so much different in a confidence level when you like, I'm like, I figured this thing out.
Yeah.
I'm going to like be very careful in how I like create the data. Whatever, do I need to create a metric for it? Do I not? Whatever. But this is the idea. This is how I can express it in code. And then when it comes out of the back test and it adds like a %, it's like the best feeling ever.
Yeah.
You're like, great, put it to bed. Like
Right.
I'm not concerned about this. Is like going into the model and we're just running it. So I'd say like my hit rate's like under 50%, but when it hits, I'm very confident in being able to implement it.
Okay. So this is our first pass at this, gathering data, trying to do this. We've got a third partner, shout out Justin. He's helping out with the coding. If we had a bucket of effort, right? What would feel right for the amount of that effort we would put towards backtesting?
I'd say that you can win without backtesting. Like
Making me nervous.
you can win without backtesting. Building a backtesting environment is hard. You have to have like you have to be aware, like your model has to be aware of what it would have spit out at the time, right? That's the
Yeah.
key thing. And then what would the bet have won or lost, right? That takes a long time. I'd say either just be like, I'm going all in on setting this backtesting environment up, or like I'm kind of gonna think this is pretty good and I'm gonna bet and like see if I get CLV or something like that.
Yeah.
Could be the secondary thing. It's like I think you should always be like what I say, like front testing or forward testing. It's like just see what happens when you bet as well. Not necessarily like just the results, but do you get CLV?
Yeah.
Are you actually predicting the outcomes of the sport instead of just betting results? Stuff like that. You could kind of, I think that's what SP was saying. It's like you could kind of make it work with that. Like build a good model that makes sense and then like start off smaller while you're betting it. Pay attention to the results. But if you wanted to do backtesting, like I would say if this is for college football
Yes.
or pro football?
College.
Okay. College. You got 3 months ish. I would say like now is a really good time to set up a back testing environment since you're not live. So there's nothing to do. Like you can't bet it right now. So like why not? But if it was like a week before the season, I would say it's probably too late and you should just kind of like iterate on the fly. But this is a really good time to start.
I'm teaching myself my SQL. I mean, we're getting into the weeds. I'm building a database so that we can feed it with the data so that we can do the back test proper. So
do you like it? Do you like learning this stuff? I'm curious.
I quit my job 2 years ago, GP, and I have been on a journey of trying to teach myself as many different things as I can since then. So this podcast, the learning how to bottoms up sports bet, all of it kind of falls into the same bucket for me. I don't know if it's going to be a tool that I see myself using in 5 years, but I know it's not a bad thing to have it in my back pocket. It's kind of where a person is in their stage of life, right? Where right now I'm trying to learn things. So for me, it's a very valuable from that perspective. Now, am I going to find myself using it in 5 years? It depends on how this back test goes.
That's exactly how back tests can be so pressure filled when you're waiting for them.
This back test will decide the rest of my life.
Yes,
Absolutely.
If
it feels like it in the moment.
Sports gambling is going to be based on this conversation, GP.
It's like Eminem, you only got one shot.
yeah. It feels like it.
So let me ask this
like
then, real quick.
Okay.
You mentioned overfitting as the number one pitfall. Are there other pitfalls that we should be aware of as we go through this process?
Yeah. You want to make sure I don't know like where you're getting your historic lines from. I mean, every historic line won't be perfect, but we've had situations where there's been like bugs in the actual lines and it really, really screws with results. Like we back tested on round matchups between golfers, but two books were showing their lines, but the lines were like with ties as a separate bet.
Yeah.
But we weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
And we're like, wow, we're getting absolutely killed by these books or whatever. Like and it's like, oh, because like ties are a separate bet or whatever. And the odds were just wrong. And
how'd you uncover that?
Well, that's a great question. Shout out to my partner, Luke. It was many, many days of staring at results where we're like, we're losing to Bet 365, but we're like beating Pinnacle and Bet Online. And we're like, this isn't right. But then we'd be like, I don't get it. And it was like Bet 365 and maybe Bovada or something.
Yeah.
And we're just like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, but we would rerun it and we would just lose to them. And any update we made, like it would be like, oh, yep, doing better against Bet Online, getting murdered by Bet 365, the sharpest book in the land. And we're like, are they secretly the golf geniuses? Like, I'm pretty sure they're not because I've seen them just be way off market like all the time and wrong. And eventually Luke just had this like aha moment. He's like, wait, they're like a European book. Like they offer like lines with ties. I think these might be lines with ties. And he literally like went in to the bet data and was like, yep, this is the wrong market.
Wow.
And there's been little cases. There's always like these little data integrity cases that come up in backtesting that I'd say are like, you're definitely going to run into. Overfitting, I think, is kind of what you're supposed to say. It's like, this is the biggest pitfall, and it is, but it's like a lot of people kind of know that by now. But once you get into it, it's going to be a lot of like making sure that the actual data from the sports books is right.
Yeah.
That's important. And then, the one thing I would we always do if we run a back test is like, if I want to learn something from a back test, sometimes instead of just seeing a number, I want to see like the bet log. So I think a lot of people will do a back test and just be like, oh, my model is 3% or whatever. But a lot of times I'll want to see like, oh, like when you choose to take a bet into a sports book, it means like you have a big disagreement with them.
Right.
So us having like a big disagreement with, well, I was going to say Bet 365, like that to me is normal. But when we have a big disagreement with some sharper, like a Bet Chris, I want to see all of the bets we place into Bet Chris, because I'm not sure I think we're right and they're wrong. So I'm like, why do we have these big disagreements with them? And I'll just look through and I'll see like if there's any common themes. And looking through the actual bet by bet data, I'm able to, that's a good way for me, help me like form hypotheses instead of being like, they like guys on the Euro Tour more or something. So maybe we're underweighting the Euro Tour or something like that. And it's like, because we're always betting PGA against Euro Tour on Chris or whatever, like that's where our disagreements are. And then I'm thinking like, maybe we don't give the Euro Tour enough credit. Like that's a fake example actually. So don't just
fire
change
away
your model. Yeah. But like for the sharp books in backtest, I love looking through the actual bet by bet data. That's
Gotcha.
something we do every backtest.
With the data discrepancies that you're identifying to correct issues you have in your backtesting process, that's more of a foundation of really institutional knowledge that you've built up with regards to the industries overall. So in a situation, and I know if you don't know the difference between Bet365 and Pinnacle, you probably shouldn't be developing your own models at this point. But if
It's a good rule of thumb.
yeah, but if you didn't have that institutional knowledge, you would have never been able to even uncover that there was that discrepancy in the first place, correct?
This is such a good point, because I don't know if you've ever been on algo betting, the Reddit forum, but
No,
it's
I'm gonna.
it's like full of really smart people, but who are like asking like really basic like that, even like your dumbest like winning arbor could answer, where they're like, I'm building this, like I'm building like this model and I'm using like all of these different techniques I learned at my stats PhD. Is it better to bet into the sharp book because there's less vig? No. No, like what, it's like there's less vig for a reason. They take bigger size, it's like all of this stuff that you want to like beat them over the head with a Ed Miller's book or something, being like, this is the easy stuff. But like I think people hop into modeling with a lack of understanding of like you said, how the industry works.
Yeah.
And the biggest pitfall for somebody who's really smart with a strong technical background is that they have no industry knowledge.
Yeah.
And probably the second big one is no knowledge of the actual sport. And then with that, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah. This calls back to our conversation with Colin Davey, where he was talking about the 4 levels of sports bettor. And the traditional method is you hop in at level 1 and you lose a bunch, and then you figure out how to not lose, and then you progress your way up. But then there's also the subset of people with like the mathematical or the analytical skills who try to hop in at that level 3 without the institutional knowledge, and then they get crushed as well.
Yep.
So nice callback to that. Okay. So those are some of the pitfalls. Rundown, what are the top benefits to backtesting then?
It allows you to get some level of extra confidence in a bottom-up model, because when you build a bottom-up model, for people who don't know the lingo, it's bottom-up. I always say like bottom-up is when your model would bet into a market even if it was the same price at every single sports book. It's like you take data from the sport and you use that to predict an outcome, and then you go bet it, and you're not, market information is not your like number one source.
Yeah.
So when you have that, you have this issue where like you might be coming from top down, and you're so used to having like that comfort blanket of like, well, Pinnacle said it was good, right? But now you're like, well, I say it's good, but I'm like kind of an idiot. So like, what, like, am I really going to go bet this? And you want like something that's super important in gambling, no matter what, is you want it to be very unlikely that you're losing. Like how much you win is less important. And that's more from, I know you had Dan on, and it's more from a risk of ruin standpoint. Like I always say, like a good thing to be saying in gambling is it can't be that bad. Like it can't be that bad. And that's what backtesting helps you with for bottom up modeling. If you do it right, it's like you suddenly don't necessarily have the same, like it obviously can't be that bad if like Chris and Bet Online and Pinnacle steam and there's a stale line on Bet Rivers. Like it's obvious that that bet can't be bad, right? But like your model says, I want to bet first half, under on, Miami, Ohio versus, Penn State in the opener that like is not a serious game. And you're like, oh man, like that's kind of scary. Having something to fall back on and being like, well, I did all this work. I put it through a kind of rigorous back test. And you know what? It might not be exactly the EV that I spit out, but this kind of back test has showed me that even if it's not that, it can't be too bad. And I'm willing to kind of go out there and make this bet. So the benefits of back testing are kind of like emotional.
It can't be that bad.
If you can't tell, we're not exactly 100% aligned on how seriously we should be taking back testing.
Right. I mean, you convinced me to just forego it.
Now, hold on. This is our first time, GP, doing any kind of modeling of our own.
Okay.
You do recommend we back test, correct?
At this, if it's college football, you have the time.
He's not hedging off that.
Right.
You have the time.
Right.
If you don't have the time, don't worry about it.
Right.
It's
we'll see if we get to it.
I would put it this way. Like, let's say college football started in a week. Is it better to just not bet your model at all because you didn't backtest? Or is it better to kind of start betting it for smaller, ease into it, and then build out more, robust processes in the off season? Like that's better.
Yeah.
So what I'm not saying like if you skip it, because you don't have the time, but it's like still going out and betting it and seeing how, watching the results come in, that's still going to do you better than not betting it at all.
Right.
So
waiting. Yeah.
If it were, then I would just say like, don't, get more serious about like how you're going to best execute it. Is the other problem with bottom up modeling is everybody thinks like bottom up modeling is like this academic exercise, but really like what a good model is, like I talked about this once, it's like it's just like a race car for a good driver. Like you still have to be getting good prices. You still have to be thinking about like, oh, I'm really going to step on this bet because it does have some sharp confirmation, or like, man, I bet this and it moved back against me. Like I want to hold back and maybe go reevaluate my model. Like there's so much more. Like a good modeler is like pretty important, but they're not necessarily like a good bettor. And the best bettor is like absolutely certainly not the best modeler.
Yeah.
And so being out there like in the streets with your model is an important part of betting and making money bottom up. So I would never want you to forego that just because you hadn't backtest. But I think like as the timing sits now, like it might be worth it.
Okay. We are backtesting.
Yeah.
We're going to backtest.
Absolutely.
We have the time.
Unless it's August.
GP.
Unless it's August. You can't backtest in August. Backtests in August are 2% worse.
Yes. Last question on backtesting. Any general tips for us as we progress along with it?
Don't get discouraged by your first. It's not going to be good at first. Like even if it's like good, it won't be that good. I would focus more on making sure like the mechanics of it work at first than the actual results of the first backtest. Because once it starts to work, then what you want is basically to be able to quickly iterate. Getting to that point, I felt like was our biggest hurdle of just like having everything just work. Where we know like we're going to input like this type of file and it's going to like, and we're pulling our odds from here and we have to do this or that to the odds to like get them into the right format to, once you have that, it's going to break and it's going to take some time, but like start doing that and be less attached to the actual results of your first backtest, because the big win at first is just having it spit something out. And then you use that to spin your model through it once you get new ideas. But unless you have that working, the real process of backtesting isn't like build it and backtest once. It's like build the backtesting environment, and now it's baked into your process of like a way to test hypotheses. So like it's very frustrating at first, but the first backtest is going to be like inherently the absolute most miserable one you run because it's going to keep breaking constantly. But once you work through the annoyances of the first one, the rest is you're in a much better spot.
Yeah. I appreciate the foreshadowing there.
I'm prepared.
Yeah.
And
We got this. I'm prepared.
I also like, that's the part I'm looking forward to. Like I said that when we met with Justin a couple of times ago, it's like the iterative process is, I think, where I'll be able to bring the most to the table.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
It's fun. I love testing an idea. There's literally no bigger rush than like throwing your idea out to a backtest.
Yeah.
I spent 17 years in data analysis, and my favorite part of the job was when the story came together.
Yeah.
That's when you've got all your data together, you had your hypotheses, you go in and pull it, and it proves out what you thought it was going to be.
Right on.
So I'm excited. I'm prepared for this. I
Yeah.
think we're going to be good to go there.
All right. We're going to be rich.
One other topic here for you, GP. We're working on moving from top-down betting to bottoms-up betting. We spent a lot of time on this show, a lot of energy on top-down betting, and at the end of the day, it came back to me, boy, it's not that much fun. At the end of the day, I kind of just am excited for the challenge and for the energy that comes with creating my own numbers instead of being point and click, chase and steam kind of better. So in your opinion, what are the benefits of approaching sports betting from a bottoms up perspective and moving away from top down betting?
Well, one, you touched on an important one, which is I do think it's more fun. I'm not someone who necessarily preaches like we're here to have fun. I think the underlying theme of my show is like you're here to make money. Like it's a pretty good gig. Just shut up and make money. But
we have a different tone on our show.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's why that you couldn't tell if I was being sarcastic because my show's so fun. It's so fun and light. But I do think it's a lot more fun, and something that comes along with bottom up betting is you're usually doing it on a sport that you like. I assume you guys like college football.
One of us does.
Okay, that's actually good. You want to have a split. But like, yeah, like with golf, I really like golf. I'm watching the PGA. I'd be watching the PGA Championship.
Yeah.
If I was betting it or not, and I'd probably be more likely to watch it if I wasn't betting. Right. Yeah, I feel like I know things about golf now that like are just interesting, and some of them may even help my own golf game, and sometimes I don't get to talk about them with anyone besides my partners because I would consider them like not like publicly baked into numbers or like unknown to the market. But at the same time, I still like going through that exploratory process with a sport. And like, it's not top-down betting kind of removes the sport from betting, where bottom-up betting really brings the sport into it and requires you to know something about the sport. Like domain knowledge goes a long way, long way in bottom-up betting. So that's obviously one aspect of it that's good. But what I think is like the key aspect is it scales better. It's not time sensitive. So like what's the Billy Walters, like style of betting group? It's to like, he has his numbers. He's like there on the phone and he's like calling like, hey, I need this bet or I need that bet. Like if he was like, he's like, I need you to hit Bet Rivers. Like, Pinnacle just moved. And they're like, okay, like, yep, I'm just waking up. And then they're like, and he's like, it's gone. It's like, there's no way to scale, top down well. Whereas bottom up, I mean, you're going to have stuff that is inherently your own, so it's not going to move unless you bet it. It's not always true because you're going to have overlaps. Like I'm sure there's parts of, like for example in golf, like I knew on Monday we had to bet Bryson like before Data Golf posted because I knew what they're going to come in at, and like a big part of Monday morning was just making sure like we bet Bryson. And this is great because this comes off before he tees off. So if he comes out and sucks, then there's a good shout out for my golf betting skills. But, yeah, like that. So there's like similarities between your models and other people's models, but like for the most part, you're going to have time to execute your positions, and that leads to scale if you want to send it out to other people you're working with or whatnot. Whereas you can't just like send out top down odd jam plays to people. At least that I haven't I haven't been able to make that work. But it's definitely easier than modeling. But I think scale and enjoyment are the two.
Yeah.
The two, and then the third one, SP likes to talk about this, is like you do build, like Peter, you were saying you were learning SQL. You build more transferable skills. Like you become an actual data analyst if you can bottom up that well. I think it would be hard to deny like you would be a good asset for a lot of different companies from a data analytics standpoint, because you've kind of tried and tested your opinions and your data analysis against the market. Whereas I think if you didn't do that, like you could have some technical skills, but you lack some juice in like what actually matters and how to get to the bottom of stuff that you need when you're betting. Because if you don't, you start losing a bunch of money. So it forces you to actually be good at it. So I think the skills learned is a benefit. I'd say the scale is the benefit I care the most about, but the enjoyment I think is what a lot of people like they shift to. I think if I could make twice as much money but I could only bet top down, I think I would bet top down. Not retire early. Like I mean, I enjoy it, but like I don't enjoy it that much.
Yeah.
Well, we've spent a lot of our time gambling as top down bettors thinking about account health. I'm hopeful this actually kind of helps in that regard. Is there anything we can expect to be different? Because like I'm hoping we're going to be betting into close. Hopefully we're not getting too much CLV. Shouldn't this be a net positive for our account health, at least in the short term?
I mean, betting first halves, like, yes, kind of. I mean, they're still not going to love it. Like, there have been times that we've sent out bottom up stuff and like the account has been limited in a day at the end of the day. Like, now that stuff was super obvious. Like, we just wanted to like smash like the board and it just looked super non-recreational. And it was on like a super like top tier rec book. But yeah, I would say definitely it's better for account health. I don't know if it's as good as maybe the narrative, the current narrative, but at the same time, like it's so much easier to work with other people. So you don't worry about account health as much if you're bottom up betting. Okay. Because then if you wanted to work with like somebody who's moving or like at a kiosk or whatever, you can send them your stuff if it's bottom up, and you can't if it's top down. So the account health feels more do or die also when you're top down, because you just don't have access to as many different avenues to bet.
Yeah. Like for example, with a bottoms up approach, if you've got solid numbers, you can bet into sharp books that take your money and don't limit you. Whereas from a top down perspective, we're exclusively focusing on those recreational books that are going to be quick to limit.
Yeah. That's the other thing, is like you can definitely get reliable volume into the like traditional offshore market. If you bet bottom. Although I will say I've changed my opinion, and like I do think you could beat the sharps top down, but it's I think there's more money to be made if you can beat them bottom up.
Right. Okay. All right, GP. We respect the heck out of your line of thinking. We know about the Risk Takers podcast, which we've plugged from time to time on this show. You have more than just the podcast for folks, though, right? What else do you have going on that we can share with our audience?
Peter, my OnlyFans is not public yet.
What's GP Plus?
There's the comedic presence.
Okay. Yes. GP Picks Plus. That's part of the Discord. Or well, it's not. You can sign up for it. It's basically a top down. It's my top down betting algorithm, and it sends out like 500-ish plays a day. And like I said earlier, like now I think that I believe you can beat sharps top down. It's due to the work that I did on this. And basically, I think a lot of people who join the Discord or listen to the show, they're not ready. Like the primary value for me of it is networking. And if I get like somebody I can work with, either getting bets down or come in-house and do some modeling, like that is worth a lot of money. There's a lot of people that are listening like that aren't ready for that maybe step, but they're looking for something. And I was kind of like not super. I had like people be like, okay, should I go to Odgym or should I go here or there? And I like found I couldn't really recommend them, like honestly, because I didn't really know what their methodology was, which makes sense.
Right.
I was like, I think, the best methodology is top down, steam chasing, like line movement, anything with line movement. That kind of comes from my trading days. Like anything price action wise is always going to be more predictive than like taking stale numbers and trying to find an insult or an insight from them.
Yeah.
Which would be like a devigging strategy more. I was like, you know what, like this would be a fun project. I talked to a couple of people that I thought would be good to work on it with. And we built GP Picks Plus, which is basically like it's basically how I would bet top down if I had to plug the model into the market and just leave my computer. Like to me, it's like it's not going to have the most bets sent out of any model, but I'm very confident in the bets that it posts. And that's part of it is like we track the alerts. So like every month I get the data and I just post it to the Discord. So it's like, I think sometimes it's kind of ambiguous, like how well a top-down tool is doing. But like this one, it's all it is like, these are the bets that are recommended. And this is how it did.
Yeah.
And I use that to, like I said, I use that betting data. And then I sometimes figure out certain things and I can make adjustments to improve the actual, forward results. And that's kind of the process. Like it's not going to be your highest volume thing, but it's going to be a tool that, I'm checking the results out every month. And if the market's kind of changing, I can see that or see some of it and make changes to it.
Yeah.
And you kind of get what you see. It's just alerts for that do whatever percent ROI. I think we bumped the ROI up recently. So I think we're at like 4.3% right now.
Yeah.
Over the year, over 50,000 bets or something. And I think it could be I think it'll go up a little bit, but that's that's basically it. It's kind of like a no frills. I said in the Discord, I said it's like Raz if you got way more bets a day and it actually won. And I kind of stand by that.
I'm kicking the tires on it. I like it.
This is what this show's here for.
Yeah, exactly.
This show is here for someone to come on and say, yeah, my tool gives out 500 plays per day, but it's not one of the high volume tools.
Yeah, right. Right.
Think about it.
Yeah.
I know. But for a lot of the audience, it's like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Also, free. The Discord is free. Like you can just hang out in the
Yeah.
Discord too. So I recommend that as well.
And I'm trying to spend a little time like simplifying the Discord and making it like a good spot for basically anybody who's like trying to win betting.
Yeah, that's very cool.
That's
Appreciate you nurturing the
Just
community like that.
Free,
Yeah.
So join the Discord.
Yeah, join the Discord. Yeah.
Join the Discord.
All right,
You
real
don't
quick.
have to do GP Picks Plus, but join the Discord.
Then you'll want to. All right.
Yeah.
So you brought up trading. If sports betting went away,
Oh yeah.
yeah, if sports betting went away, would your next move be in trading, poker, or other?
This is a good question. It really like I've thought too much about this recently. What I'd want to do is poker because I still feel like this spiritual connection to the true AP world, the casino world, as much as like I know that trading is an extension of this world, like something about the lore and the nostalgia of the actual gambling world, to me, like, is part of why I like doing this.
Yeah.
And the people I've looked up to have all been well, not, yeah, when I was 5, I wasn't looking up to Billy Walters, but, you know, maybe when I was 12. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that world. I like, and I'm more comfortable in the poker world. You know, I started when I was 18 and whatnot. But if I'm being realistic, I would go back into trading.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends from my trading firm who are doing really well. A lot of, 3 of my good friends have kind of like started up their own desk at this company.
Very
They're
cool.
doing well, and I keep in touch with them, and I'd probably go beg them for a job. And I think like trading, if we're talking about scale, and that's like been a drum I've kind of banged on my podcast, is making sure you're doing something that's worth your time. Like trading in financial markets just scale a ton better than poker, and they're certainly harder, but like I think I'd probably take my chance, and knowing that I still have some friends in the industry too, to be able to like help me maybe get back in, and then just, I think I'm a more focused, reasonable person than when I was at my trading firm in New York. I was like still just like smoking pot every day, and just didn't really give a fuck what happened. No, it's okay to smoke pot every day. It is. But I think like I was much less serious.
Yeah.
And I'd love to, I'd think now, like going back in, I think I'd be able to do okay.
Yeah.
Back too. Like,
I'll say this. We all know somebody who works in financial services in one way or another. Maybe we do, but most people don't know professional gamblers personally. That's the inside you. Yeah, I want to beat this.
yes.
The financial services stuff, there's a whole world of people doing that. And I see that the sort of it's the interest, it's the intrigue, it's the I want to get up and do this, as opposed to I'm getting up and doing this for the paycheck. So right. If I had the ability to like make that sort of choice, and it was like, man, I could do this or I could do this. Give me the risk taker point of view, GP.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's go play poker. Let's do it.
Good plug.
I'm in. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, GP. Folks, check out the Risk Takers podcast wherever you podcast. Check out his YouTube channel at the Risk Takers podcast. Check out his other services as well. That's going to do it for us. Good juju to your bets, everyone, and we'll talk again next week.
Bye.